Could China's idea of bypassing the Malacca Strait slash oil transport costs by $493 million? With India's natural geopolitical advantage, it's always pulling the strings in the waters of this narrow strait. Is Beijing prepared to outsmart India, or will it risk causing World War III? What tricks do these two have up their sleeves? Understanding why these two countries are fighting over an 885-kilometer stretch of water is about to become more amusing than a clown car at a traffic jam.
What makes this strait so special?
Let's start with geography. Behold the Malacca Strait, where the Indian Ocean opens up to the South China Sea. Now, here's the kicker. India's got a geographic leg up. The shortest route to the strait from India is 1,600 to 1,700 kilometers, starting from the Chennai coast in the west-southwest, while China's closest point is the Hainan Island, lounging around 1,500 kilometers away to the east-northeast.
Why all the fuss then?
Sharing is caring, but when two Asian superpowers are battling for the spotlight, sharing's about as likely as a snowstorm in the Sahara. Plus, India's got a secret weapon in its maritime arsenal, the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. These islands are 1,071.6 kilometers away from the entrance of Malacca, and boy, does that scare China.
Why's China so worried about India taking control though?
According to Fleetmon, a staggering 100,000 vessels pass through this strait every year. And get this, a quarter, i.e. 25% of the world's trade happens via the Malacca Strait. Now, here comes the punchline: China's voracious appetite for oil. Statista reveals that the Red Dragon is slurping up a whopping 14.3 million barrels of the black gold. But wait, the plot thickens. The pandemic stirred up a gasoline demand like never before.
But what's the connection between China's oil cravings and its territorial jealousies?
70% of China's precious oil guzzling happens thanks to foreign imports. Think Venezuela, Angola, and the Persian Gulf crew. And guess how this oil reaches China? The Malacca Strait is the grand stage for this maritime show.
But where does India squeeze into this maritime mess?
First up, there's the Phillips Channel, the northern entrance of the strait. Lucky for India, it's a cool 150 to 200 kilometers from Great Nicobar Island. Now, the Jurien Strait. It's the southern tail of the waterway, and it's the buffer zone between the Indonesian island of Palau and Sumatra's northern coast. While this spot's potential for choking exists, China actually enjoys great relations with Indonesia. Luckily, both countries have the same interest when it comes to maritime challenges in the region.
So, if China's feeling the squeeze at Phillips Channel, what's its game plan?
To arm itself, obviously. China decked out its maritime closet with military bases, starting with Djibouti in the Indian Ocean. And remember the whispers about China eyeing a spot in the Maldives back in 2018? Well, let's just say China's been doing some heavy-duty shopping there, courtesy of its tourism and infrastructure spree. Analysts suspect that they might just sneak in a base in the Pacific Islands, a sneaky, strategic treasure hunt.
Will India just twiddle its thumbs as China tightens its maritime grip?
Think of the Act East policy, India's version of defense. It's all about forming alliances, building bridges, and throwing shade at China's advances.
Oh, a loaded gun in India's holster, huh?
The battle for Malacca is a high-stakes poker match where the jackpot's economic supremacy, security, and a front-row seat to the Indo-Pacific show.
Wait, did India ever put its money where its mouth is and choke the strait?
Yeah. Back in 2020, when things got a bit heated between India and China at the line of actual control, there were whispers of India giving the strait a squeeze. And just to spice things up, the Indian Navy subtly sailed into the South China Sea waters.
So, what are China's strategies?
China's got more tricks up its sleeve than a magician. Ever heard of the String of Pearls? It's like a magical necklace made of Chinese military and commercial bling along its sea lines. Each pearl a strategic port or base that adds a touch of sparkle to China's maritime ensemble. Don't forget the Thai Canal, China's grand illusion to sidestep the Malacca Strait traffic jam.
Wait, the Thai Canal? What's that all about?
Picture this. A proposed canal that would connect the Gulf of Thailand with the Andaman Sea, bypassing the Strait of Malacca. With the Malacca Strait, China has to traverse long distances, involving reaching the southern point of the strait, crossing the narrow waterway, and then entering the Andaman Sea, where it then has to pass through Indian-controlled Andaman and Nicobar Islands. But with the Thai Canal, China can use the Kra Isthmus and shorten this distance by 1,200 kilometers.
What about the time?
The Thai Canal would be a dream come true because it would reduce shipping times between the South China Sea and the Andaman Sea by 2 to 3 days.
But what about the neighbors?
Building a canal in Thailand could compete with ports in the Malacca Strait area like Singapore, Port Klang and Tanjung Pelepas. If it happens, Malaysia might not feel the impact for about 15 years after the canal's done. Singapore is worried it might lose around 30% of its shipping business because of this new canal. About 15.1 million barrels of oil in a day pass through the Malacca Strait. Using the new Thai Canal could make transporting oil a bit cheaper, like 9 cents per barrel cheaper, but that's just an estimate. It might save around $493 million a year if all the ships use it. Some folks are saying this new canal could help China's navy in the Indian Ocean. They think it's part of China's bigger plan to have more influence in the region, including setting up bases in places like Sri Lanka and Pakistan. This could be a problem for India in its conflict with China.
So, is this Thai Canal a flawless plan?
Oh, Chrono, if only life were that simple. The Thai government got reservations bigger than an all-you-can-eat buffet. The canal could divide the country's 4 southern provinces from the north, creating chaos and potential secessionist shenanigans. As of now, China's looking at Myanmar and Cambodia to help figure out this mess. Both of these countries sandwich Thailand and see how China's invested in developing ports in Sihanoukville and Kiangpu. This could turn these countries towards China's side, and there's speculation about China involving Vietnam and Laos. With the help of these countries, China can put enough pressure on Thailand to cave in. But hold on to your maritime hats, there's more of China's elaborate maritime strategy. Drumroll, and the Belt and Road Initiative, or BRI, comes into the picture.
The BRI? China's grand plan to shake up the world.
With BRI, China intends to invest in more than 150 countries and international organizations. The belt is the Silk Road Economic Belt, which begins in Xi'an, China, and passes through Central Asia, including countries like Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan. The western terminus of the belt is Europe, specifically countries like Poland and Germany. Then the Silk Road begins at major Chinese coastal cities like Quanzhou and Guangzhou. The road passes through Southeast Asia, South Asia, and East Africa, including countries like Malaysia, Indonesia, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Kenya, and more. The Maritime Silk Road loops around the southern tip of Africa and connects with the Mediterranean Sea, reaching Europe in countries like Italy and Greece.
The thing with China is, it either goes big or goes home.
And now, let's shed light on India's secret weapon. India's well aware that the Malacca Strait is the go-to party for oil tankers from all over. It's more like the oil capital of the sea, with guests coming from the Middle East, Japan, Singapore, and more.
So, if things go south, India's got the ultimate checkmate move?
With Malacca under its watchful eye, India could be the puppeteer of the Indo-Pacific show, pulling the strings of economic growth and stability like a master conductor. There are plenty of other straits for China to pick, but all of these come with a catch. The other viable options include the Sunda Strait and the Lombok Strait.
Why isn't China developing marine trade routes through these?
The Lombok Strait connects the Bali Sea to the Indian Ocean. The distance from the Dalian Naval Base to the Lombok Strait is approximately 7,300 nautical miles, which is roughly 13,519.6 kilometers. So there's a reason why China doesn't use this strait. Then there's the Sunda Strait. It links the Java Sea to the Indian Ocean. Now, the distance between China and this strait isn't the same everywhere in China. A study says that using the Sunda Strait instead of the Malacca Strait adds about 2,009 kilometers to the shipping journey. Safe to say, it's no good either. The region is shallow and has strong tidal currents. Navigating would be way too much of a hassle for even the finest of sailors. Geographically speaking, the area is very unstable because of the presence of an active volcano, called Anak Krakatau.
Which makes Malacca China's indispensable option.
China really relies on bringing in hydrocarbons, which are like the lifeblood of its energy. Over 70% of its petroleum and natural gas exports are shipped through the Malacca Strait. This makes it super important for China's energy security plans. It's like a major lifeline for their energy needs. Where shipping takes 24 days with Malacca, it takes 26 days with the Sunda and 28 with the Lombok Strait. According to RSIS, shipping costs through them can cost China $84 to $220 billion every year.
So that leaves poor China in a bit of a puzzle.
The Red Dragon bought out pretty much all of its weapons. According to the US Naval War College, China has over 100 warships and submarines that can wreak havoc across the Indian Ocean. On top of that, Beijing even specified certain instructions to the People's Liberation Army Navy, aka PLAN, about a specific Indian Ocean strategy that involves developing a fleet consisting of potential bases, as well as logistical centers and naval hardware.
How does it affect other nations?
Blocking the strait means massive problems for the Persian Gulf and African ships carrying oil for China. Japan depends on imported energy resources, particularly oil and natural gas. A choke point could lead to increased transportation costs and potential energy shortages, affecting Japan's industries and economy.
What about Singapore and Vietnam?
The strait's blockage could disrupt Singapore's role as a transshipment and logistics hub, leading to decreased trade volumes, economic slowdown, and job losses. Because Vietnam's economy is export-orientated, choking the Malacca means holding the Vietnamese economy in a literal chokehold. The country relies on imported goods and exports, particularly in sectors like textiles, electronics, and agriculture. A blockage could lead to supply chain disruptions and economic challenges.
You're forgetting the greatest of them all, USA.
Ah yes, how could I forget? While the direct impact of a Malacca Strait blockage on the USA might be relatively limited, disruptions could have secondary effects on global supply chains and financial markets. Additionally, the USA has strategic interests in maintaining stable maritime trade routes to support its allies and partners in the Asia-Pacific region. Anything that happens at Malacca doesn't really stay at Malacca. In fact, it creates a ripple in the Indian Ocean and could cause regional instability.
So, for the sake of cooperation and conflict resolution,
India and China should really try to not choke each other, no matter how impossible it seems.